welcome back to the Blue Jays Today show, where today, guys, baseball season is approaching. We've got the pitchers and catchers report coming up this week, and spring training games following that. So very exciting stuff ahead, folks. And we got to talk about, as Blue Jay fans, what should we be looking for in this spring training from the Blue Jays players and the team as a whole for this 2024 season. We're going to get into it all and more. I'm your host, Adam Patron.
And I'm your host, Nicholas Playalog. And I do just want to say, everybody, like, I'm actually so happy that we are getting to the end of this off season. You know what I mean?
No, for real.
It feels like this off season was, and we've done a few off seasons on this show. We've done, we've covered a lot here, but like this off season in particular, and maybe it was just because of all of the different rumors about everybody and what inevitably went down. But like, holy shit, dude! Like it's fatiguing.
Dude,
you know?
I even got fatigued posting a clip today. If you guys saw it on our Twitter and Instagram, I had our intern, shout out intern Will. He cut up a clip. And it was from last week, where there's maybe a speculation on Justin Turner talking about getting another third baseman. Honestly, posting that made me sick. I was like, I don't even want to post it, but we got to post content. You know, we got to do it as a media company.
It's tiring hearing all of everything that's been going on. And I think at this point, like, us 100%, and I know Blue Jays fans too, like everybody in the chat, shout out to everybody who's here watching with us. But like, I think it's just time to like go and like watch some of our dudes like hit some goddamn baseballs, right?
I want the crack of the bat, bro. I want to hear that sound right now.
Yes, and over the weekend, like, there was this tiny little pocket of springtime warmth. This tiny little pocket of, like, 9 degrees. Maybe it even hit 10 degrees at one point over in Toronto. I don't know where you guys are, but over in Toronto. And I went outside and I was just sniffing the air, and I saw the blue sky. And I was like, holy shit,
dude,
I was
wearing my jean jacket with a hoodie, and I was like, damn, this feels nice.
Yeah.
You smell the air, you hear the birds chirping, you're like, damn, what is this?
Yeah.
This smells like baseball, but now it's cold again. Like, what the? They flirted me a little bit. They edged me a little bit.
Well, that's going to happen, man, because we're not officially there. There is still, I believe, 12 days between now and what is supposed to be the first spring training game for the Toronto Blue Jays, because I believe that happens on February 24th. So we're coming. It is coming, everybody. It is literally less than 2 weeks away, guys, before we're going to see some Toronto Blue Jays players take the field and play some baseball. So let's talk a little bit about what it is that we're going to be looking for there, guys. I feel like the first thing that I really want to discuss, the first umbrella topic here, has got to be the prospects, right? Because this is the biggest thing that you're looking for when you make it to spring training, is all of these young guys in your system. For, 95% of the year, these are just a number on a ranking. It's like, oh, here's our number 3 prospect, and we never see him. Maybe you see a couple highlights on Twitter, but this is like their one opportunity, I feel like, and our opportunity as fans to really watch them showcase what it is that they have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially early on. Like, you've seen the non-roster invitees. You saw that maybe if you're following Twitter of the Toronto Blue Jays or Instagram. I'll pull it up right here. They announced that recently, and these guys, they're going to be sent away pretty early on. So right when you start watching on February 24th, look out for these guys in the lineups in like the first few weeks of spring training. And these are a lot of interesting names, like a lot of young guys that aren't on the 40-man roster. They'll be sent down to minor leagues. They're not going to be debuting for the Toronto Blue Jays. Love Ricky Tiedemann. But he's not going to be debuting for the Toronto Blue Jays come 2024 in March, right? So, but this is a good opportunity again to see how they develop, because we saw Ricky T last spring training, and we obviously got to see a little bit of what he provides. A good lefty, big lefty at 20 years old who can throw with some high velo. He looks like a front end of the rotation guy if he develops well, and I'm looking to see some improvements too against the major league hitting this
100%, dude, because when you're looking ahead at this Toronto Blue Jays team, this Toronto Blue Jays roster, right, like obviously you're going to have Kevin Gausman locked in for time, and Chris Bass is going to be there for a minute, and Jose Barrios is there for what feels like almost ever. I mean, I know it's not, but like a lot of years left there. Yeah. But like with some uncertainty around Alec Manoah, who, by the way, is looking fit.
Oh,
everybody.
God, we got to find that photo.
That's going to be something that I'm going to be watching for in spring training. It's just how this guy looks. We're going to talk about more of that later, but like that guy looks good. But still, some uncertainty right there. And then also the fact that like Yusei Kikuchi, he's only got 1 year left on the deal. Like I'm thinking to myself, like Ricky Tiedemann, there is potential to see him at some point in 2024 with the Toronto Blue Jays, but if not 2024, then almost assuredly 2025, this guy is going to be with the team and like probably playing a major role. So I feel like this is one of the final spring trainings that we're really going to watch him before we get to see him at the MLB level, you know?
For sure, yeah. And 2025 feels like a good opportunity for him because, you know, he's still 21. He's still a young guy. And I think also going out and getting Yariel was kind of like a nice depth insurance kind of piece.
Make sure that he can really grow down there before you have to take him up, you know?
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's what the Blue Jays have been struggling with for a while, is actually finding some sort of good pitching depth. I mean, who the hell was it? Drew Hutchison was our sixth starter to begin the season last year in AAA. You can't have that. So getting Yariel is great insurance because, I mean, I don't want to derail the topic of these young prospects, but, you know, having Ricky kind of develop and be good will help the depth of the Blue Jays because, hell, what if an injury happens? What if an injury or two happens? Like, that's going to be so crucial, and you have to put him on the 40-man, you know?
Bro, I like having good pitching.
Me too.
Do you remember when we started this show, when we started Blue Jays Today, and that rotation, dude, like it was like Trent Thornton. It was
Chad.
Did we have Rourke
Tanner
at that
Rourke.
time?
It was Tanner Rourke. Chase Anderson. That's what it was. Chase Anderson.
My God, man.
Taijuan Walker we traded for at the deadline.
Yeah, we did.
He walked away.
Yeah, but I mean, like that rotation to where it was right now, and I still remember when that rotation was going on, the whole conversation was, well, if Nate Pearson's not a guy, it's a bust.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that was it.
That was the conversation.
We never
back
saw
then.
them spending the money like they did.
No, but to go from that place to where we are now and having like the depth where it's at, I don't want to go back, dude.
No, absolutely.
I don't want to go back. Well, so I'm excited to watch Ricky T.
Well, that's why this year is so interesting. I know a lot of people are down, but maybe I'm drinking the hopium just a little bit here. But last year was the first year we saw the offense not look like the Toronto Blue Jays. The Toronto Blue Jays that we know. But what do we get on the other side of the ball? We got a great rotation, just a dominant rotation with 4 guys over 31 starts. Like, that's insane. And then, and also, they just pitched incredibly well. And that was just a pleasure. But what if you can get somewhat similar production from a pitching side of things, and then also have your lineup go and bounce back and get some performances out of George Springer and Vladdy, who had really, really down years last year.
I mean, well, that's obviously what they need, right? And I mean, that is what is going to turn the tides for the Toronto Blue Jays. If they want to be a World Series championship squad, you just need both. We didn't have it last year. The pitching was all the way back. They were fucking elite.
One of the best.
The lineup just wasn't where it is, you know? So I do feel like one of those things to watch out for this spring training is going to be some of those guys that could potentially come up at some point of the season, maybe make an impact. Some names that, you know, we're not necessarily super familiar with. I mean, on this list, I know that one guy that you were pretty excited about, not saying that he's necessarily going to come up and you know, right at the beginning of the season and make an impact, but Alan Roden feels like a guy that at some point in the, you know, potentially the near future, he could be having an impact on the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, absolutely. I broke down Alan Roden in a video room very early in the season, off season, when it was like pretty dead, and I was like, I've always been keeping an eye on this guy because, you know, what's been the conversation for the Blue Jays for a long time before they even got Kevin Kiermaier, before they got Dalton Varsho, it was, well, we need a lefty outfielder who can like drive and runs. Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, we've kind of solved that for the short term right now with Kevin Kiermaier coming back. Not saying he's going to drive in a ton of runs or anything, but you never know. But Alan Roden, the very interesting about him is he's 24 years old. He's starting to get to the age now where it's like maybe you might see this guy poke his head into the big leagues. And he was dominant last year. I mean, yes, you know, high single A, double A numbers, so they're going to be skewered, but dude batted for a 317 average with an OPS of 890 and drove in how many? Oh, it's 10 home runs. So he's got a little bit of pop. Maybe not that much when he gets to the big league level, but that 317 average is a guy that I'm looking at and I'm thinking, damn, this guy could be a great quality leadoff hitter in the top 3 of the lineup. One day, maybe. That's his potential. You also see the stolen bases there at 24. Maybe he swipes a couple bags for the guys down in the middle part of the order, you know, putting himself into a good scoring position, right? Like, this guy has the potential to be that. Will he? Well, that's why we got to watch spring training, folks. We got to see how this development goes.
I'm excited for what he does because it's very clear that like the level that he's playing at right now, like he's just too good for that level, and I think it's probably time for him to get the promotion. You know, whether it be to AAA, you know, Double A finally, and then maybe to AAA as well.
Probably start in the Double A, maybe AAA.
Yeah, later. Exactly right. Because like clearly, like he's just doing more down there than like a lot of other guys. But I do want to see how he matches up against some other of the big league pitching, and you might get an opportunity to see that come spring training, because
Yeah.
Alan Rodin, he is one of the Toronto Blue Jays' top prospects. I think he ranks like 16, 17 on the list.
I think he's 7 actually now.
My mistake.
They updated
I was thinking about something that we were talking about
Right,
prior to
yeah,
hitting the record. Yeah, he is number 7. So that's phenomenal, guys. That is literally incredible. And I mean, I'd imagine that his ETA being 24 years old, like, it is going to be relatively soon. So honestly, like, I could see this guy potentially coming up at some point of the season, or if not, in 2025. This to me looks like a prime Kevin Kiermaier replacement potentially.
Exactly, right? And we don't know how good his defense is, and that's, again, another thing we want to go look at. We want to hear what the word is around camp. Like, how is he looking with the glove? How is he looking with the bat, right? That's what all these guys, like, we're not looking for them to come out and, like, they're going to have so many limited at-bats, like maybe 12, 15, maybe at-bats, right? We just want to see what's the word, what's the conversation around camp with guys like Alan Rodin. And to kind of pivot and kind of going off what you were just saying, the other guy you were thinking about, which is, I know I'm going to butcher his name. We actually looked up how to pronounce this guy's name. Not a big Italian guy right here, but Damiano Palmigiani?
I think you hit it, dude. I think you nailed
Let's go. Yeah, he's our 18th ranked prospect. And the reason why I bring him up as a guy to look for is, we're looking at his numbers in a little bit, but his numbers look good. And he's also plays third base, first base eligibility. He's 24 as well, played AAA. So this is a guy that people are kind of looking at too as, well, yeah, you got, Addison Barge up there and IKF and all these other guys, but this could be another guy you could toss his hat, in the ring saying, hey, I could fight too. If he comes out and looks decent, I think he'll put his name on the radar in spring training.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I mean, like, I don't think that Davis Schneider was a super top-tier prospect for the Toronto Blue Jays until he came up, and then it's like, oh, shit, this guy can actually play baseball, and now he is literally part of the team, looking like he could potentially be the starting second baseman for the Toronto Blue Jays at this point, right? So, yeah, I do think that this guy, considering his age, like, and considering that third base job right now, basically anybody in the prospect pool that has that 3B next to their name, like, they're kind of eyeing the Toronto Blue Jays third base bag right now and going, okay, like, sure, they paid IKF, but, like, is IKF really going to be the guy for the future? Probably not. I have kind of a direct pathway to go out and to go get that, and this spring training is a great way for him to just come out and say, like, hey guys, here I am, I'm on the scene, I can do this, give me a second look if somebody gets hurt in the regular season.
Yeah, like, that's when he could maybe come up at the earliest. If there's some big injuries and they're getting kind of desperate and a trade really isn't in the works, like, maybe you might see a Damiano, did I butcher his name again? Damiano? There we go, Damiano, coming up and playing. But, when we're talking about, like, the next 2 years being the final closing window of the Toronto Blue Jays, this is a little glimpse into what could potentially be the future. Like, whenever that turn comes, you could see this guy maybe getting some ABs and competing for a job one day. Like I really don't see him competing heavily this year for a job. Maybe next year, maybe in 2026. Absolutely.
Well, the problem is, right, like, it looks like the window for the Toronto Blue Jays is the next 2 years because, like I said at the beginning of this, these players are just names on a sheet to a lot of us, right? We're not associated with the AA or the AAA squads. We're not the coaches. We don't know these guys personally, right? So for us, you look at the stats on the page, you go, okay, maybe this guy has potential, but until you really see it, you're not sure. And that's a scary place to be. But yeah, if Damiano wants to come out in spring training and start doing phenomenally, and then when he gets his opportunity, he starts popping off the MLB, that is something that could happen. And then, would you look at that, the window, maybe it gets a little bit longer than 2 years. So these prospects, like, I mean, right now, like, it doesn't feel like they could potentially do a whole lot because it feels like we have our roster. But this is the future. This is the future of the Toronto Blue Jays.
And you brought him up before, and I see Katie bringing up right here about David Schneider. He was considering giving up baseball. That's crazy. Didn't even know that fact. But that you have to force yourself onto the 40-man. All these guys we're talking about right now aren't on the 40-man roster. So he was playing so well in the minor leagues, David Schneider, that he forced the Toronto Blue Jays to call him up. Yeah. They were scuffling. They were getting at a point in the season I think it was like early August, I believe, was when he got called up, and they were having no luck with their offense. They needed something to shake up the lineup, and what do you know? David Schneider was that guy. They were forced to make a move. So whether it be underperformances or injuries, this could be the route for someone like Damiano.
100%, dude. Sticking on the route of prospects here, folks. I mean, it feels like it goes without saying, but like two guys that I'm 100% looking at.
Oh, yeah.
One of them, friend of the show, Addison Barger, absolute legend. Like, this is a guy that I do believe is going to be in the MLB at some point this year, and like he could have a role to play with the Toronto Blue Jays in that infield. So watch out for him for sure. He is heavily motivated, been hitting the gym, looks phenomenal, by the way. And then also Elvis Martinez, kind of a similar situation. Power hitting bat, power hitting dude for the Toronto Blue Jays, man. Like I do believe that like this guy, depending on how IKF is doing, depending on how things are going with the Toronto Blue Jays, like there is a chance that we could see him come to the MLB.
I could see this reality happening where you have IKF playing. I mean, like, look, I mean, we're going to skip ahead to this conversation a little bit later. Maybe we'll jump off this right after this. But IKF, like, how much playing time is this guy really going to get? Like, when I flash over here, everybody, and I look at the Toronto Blue Jays last year, you're missing 581 at-bats from Matt Chapman and 592 at-bats from Whit Merrifield.
Plate appearances.
Oh, excuse me, plate appearances, right? Like, that's a lot of plate appearances. That's over 1,000. How many of those are going to be given to IKF?
Yeah.
He might see 450. Hell, he might flirt with 500. Now, is that the solution right here for the Toronto Blue Jays to have someone like IKF get that many at-bats? I don't know, right?
I think it depends how he's doing, right? Like, I really do believe that it's going to depend how he's doing. I think that they paid him for 2 years.
Right.
And this is another guy. I'm very interested to see how IKF looks with a baseball bat in his hand in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform in spring training when it's his time, right?
And also, like, what position is he playing too, right? Where are they going to deploy him, right?
What is that split? Because we've heard that there's going to be a lot of time for him at third base. A lot of reps that he's going to have at third base. Who else is going to have reps over there? Is Davis Schneider going to have a few? Is it going to be Santiago Espinal? Or is it literally just going to be IKF eating up all of it? I think for me, I would feel more comfortable if I did see a few other guys flirting with that job. Just because, you know what, at the end of the day, like, it's always better to be versatile. You don't want to be in a situation where come June, IKF is literally the only guy who's playing third base for you. One, maybe he's not performing well, or two, he gets injured, and it's like, oh shit, now somebody's got to play this position that they haven't played literally all year long.
Right.
So I would love to see a little bit of a split go on in spring training for sure.
I agree, right? But, you know, the reason why I brought him up is because we're talking about these big prospects. I mean, Elvis Martinez, we've been talking about for like the last like 3 spring trainings.
Totally.
You know, like this guy's always been in the conversation, and Addison Barger really broke out last year in that conversation. So when is it going to be time for them to actually get a shot? I could see a reality where they do bring up Elvis Martinez mid-season if it's just not working out. Like if IKF is struggling, maybe he's struggling defensively too. Like if there's something just wrong here, and we're in a competitive window, we got to try something. That might be the move. There also could be another thought to this. Because they do have people like Damiano down there and people like Davis Schneider as well who could play some third base, maybe they hold on to an Elvis Martinez or an Addison Barger and think about them using them as trade bait for the trade deadline. Because, you know, prospect rankings, obviously, if you're ranked higher, you're going to have a little bit more value, a little bit more command. So maybe if they have some other guys in the minors who are killing it, like those other guys I mentioned, maybe bringing them up to compete and then using them as trade bait. That's another thought that they could go down, they could flirt with, but I would like to see him get a shot because you never know. This guy could be a disgustingly good power hitter.
Totally.
Like a Jorge Soler type of power hitter for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Every single year, there's going to be a few guys that like have never played in the MLB before that come up to the show and then they just go crazy, right? Ellie De La Cruz seems like a prime example of that. Granted, he was a very highly touted prospect when it happened, so everybody kind of expected that he would be good at baseball. But I mean, like, did anyone expect that he'd be that good at baseball right off the hop? Probably not, you know? So, like, this is a big infusion to your lineup if you can hit on one of those guys. Speaking about some prospects for the Toronto Blue Jays who are a little bit down the line that are probably going to get a shot, I feel very comfortable and confident in saying that Spencer Horwitz is going to be on the MLB roster at some point this season, maybe even starting on it literally come March 28th. So watch out for him, guys. I imagine he's going to get a lot of at-bats in spring training because they're going to see what he has to offer. And this is going to be your, getting Guerrero off of his feet or, giving, a little bit of insurance at first base for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, I always saw Spencer last year, and granted, like actually from Barger's mouth, he said that he was the best player on that AAA team.
And he deserved
and
it
he
the
deserved
most
it
to
the
go
most.
to the show.
Absolutely. And like I think he has flirting with what, like over a 900 OPS or
Yeah.
something in AAA. It was gross, right? Like so when he came to the Blue Jays late part of the season, I always saw him as like, yeah, like it feels like this is his kind of debut to take over Brandon Belt's job. Like if we did end up getting a Reese Hoskins right this spring. Or this offseason, excuse me, then yeah, it was always going to be Spencer Horwitz's job. And I could easily see Spencer Horwitz putting up a mid 750 OPS, just a ballpark right here. Like I think he's going to be a good bat. He's a lefty, so it gives you another option when you're making that lineup card.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. I'm cool with him starting with the Toronto Blue Jays this spring in opening day, and I'm excited to see what he does this spring training. So yeah, I'm down for it.
100%, dude. Let's talk a little bit more about the already existing Toronto Blue Jays players. Before we get to that, folks, quick shout out to the sponsor of this video.
Whoa! Time for your daily Betway breather. A quick reminder that the best place to bet is on Betway. Must be 19 years of age or older to play. In collaboration with iGaming Ontario, please bet responsibly. Now, back to the content.
Shout out to Betway, everybody, for being absolutely phenomenal. It is the place to be if you're interested in sports betting, guys. Also, if you haven't already done so, please hit the like and smash the subscribe button on this video. There is a lot of question marks on the Toronto Blue Jays team as a whole. This is why a lot of people are walking into this season with some hesitations, us included. When you're looking at Alec Manoah, when you're looking at Vladimir Guerrero Jr., when you're looking at George Springer, these are some of the guys that we really want to look at. And I do feel like Alec Manoah is for me anyways, one of the dudes who I want to watch this guy all spring training. I want to see everything he's doing. I want to see his arm angle. I want to see how he's handling all of it. All of his pitches. I want to see his body, because the pictures that are coming out, the videos that are coming out of Alec Manoah working out.
I just tried to find the one of him on a raft in the lake or something like that. I don't know if you guys seen it on Twitter. He's looking good.
Dude, it's like you see it in his face, right? Like legitimately it looks like, and again, he's still a big boy. Like he is still a big boy.
And he always will.
He always will be, right? But it looks like for him anyways, and for his body type, right? He has dropped, and I'm just speculating here, but I'm thinking like 20, 30, 40 pounds, which is probably where he needs to be anyways, because that's where he finished. That's where he finished pitching in 2022, right? Because that was the whole thing. He came into 2023 30, 35 pounds heavier than he should have been, or that he finished his last year as, and it looks like he dropped all that completely. So I do anticipate Alec Manoah is going to be in for a bounce back year, but I think that spring training and watching what he's going to do might just indicate to us how much of a bounce back can we potentially expect. You know?
Yeah, because coming into spring training last year, the big red flag right out of the game, we were kind of saying, oh, maybe he's just getting warmed up, or maybe he's just got to get up to speed. The big red flag was that fastball was nowhere near it was in the year before.
Dude, it was like 2 miles per hour lower than what he was throwing the year prior, right?
Literally.
And it is always one of those things where when you're first starting out, you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Because they got to get their arm warmed up. It's got to start moving. He was dealing with the pitch clock. It was all this. But, like, it was significantly lower to begin that year than it was at the end of the last year, right? And that is kind of cause for concern for somebody his age.
And I love that you said the pitch clock, because that's another argument people are kind of throwing out there. Like, is he going to get adjusted to the pitch clock? And I think, well, what does he need to do? Well, he needs to be more prepared going into his outings, right? He needs to know and understand, how am I going to attack these guys? Because a lot of time when you're thinking in between pitches is, how do I want to attack these guys? You got to almost rely a little bit on your catcher. I think that's going to be a repertoire, or a rapport, that you want to establish early in spring training, right? What are those conversations you're having to help get these hitters out? Him and Kirk had a really good tandem going. Was there an issue there? I don't know. Or was it a physical thing? Like, was he physically not able to get up to speed, or was he rushing too much and then, he wasn't getting his arm into the right slot like he did before? Like, is that an issue? But for me, it's the fastball. Like, what will tell you that he's getting it all right and he's confident with his pitches? The fastball velocity. If you're throwing it hard, you're healthy, you're on time, you're feeling good. If you can see that fastball hitting 94, 95, like we saw a lot when he was a Cy Young 3, I think we're going to be just fine.
Well, it all starts there, right? And then, so you get your velocity down the fastball, and you have something to build on as a pitcher. And for Manoah, once you get that, then it goes to the slider. And that's kind of the next thing that I want to look at too, is the break on that slider, because that was something that was significantly down last year, right?
It almost broke different.
Yeah, it did not. It just didn't. It didn't work the same. It didn't work the same. When it was breaking way outside.
Right.
And so like nobody was biting on it. And then other times, it just like didn't go enough, right? And I felt like for Manoah, he needs that to be his put away deception pitch, right? That's the one that gets people swinging and missing and shaking their heads as they walk back to the dugout. Like that's something that he absolutely needs. Yeah. I don't know why it was down. I don't know if that was a fitness thing, a pitch clock thing, just a preparation thing. But getting that slider back to where it was in 2022, that is going to be critical.
I think, and my guess is it's a health thing. Like he just wasn't healthy going into spring training.
Yeah.
In many facets, you can argue. And then when it came to the game, the slider, you can see right here with the horizontal movement, it was down. It was, it's kind of a cluster right here in 2022, but it's around that 14 and a half inches of movement in the horizontal direction. It was down. It was down. It wasn't moving horizontally like a slider should. It was almost looking like a curveball for a lot of the time, right? Because the vertical movement was the same, but you got to get that movement, right? Against the righties, you got to get them to miss. But if they're still able to get, an extra, what was it?
It was 2 inches.
Basically 2 inches. That's still a big difference. That's the difference of a barrel and a ground out.
That's exactly what I literally made that exact comparison because I made a video about Alec Manoah pretty recently, folks. And I was talking about this exactly, and I was saying that 2 whole inches, it doesn't sound like a lot when you say it, but when you're talking about baseball, and legitimately like 2 inches, that is a home run or a ground out, or a pop-up.
It's a barrel or a weak contact.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's an out or that's a hit, and I feel like for Manoah, like he needs those 2 inches, dude.
Right.
He needs them.
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you saw too, there could be some health issues last year, right, that we're dealing with. And he was falling behind very, very early, and he's just throwing a cookie fastball, man.
Yeah.
Like, he's just throwing the cookie fastball. So, what we need to see is if you can see that velo at 94, 95, 96, then I think we're looking pretty good. Don't get panicked if the first start he's like 93, 94. Like, oh no, like it's lower than the average. Just be patient, wait, see where he's throwing where he's commanding his pitches too, because that's a whole other factor. But that's a major thing, man.
Completely agree, dude. Completely agree. Let's talk about another bounce back for the Toronto Blue Jays, or somebody that we hope is going to bounce back. George Springer. This guy's getting paid all the money for the Toronto Blue Jays right now. A few off seasons ago, we signed him. I remember on this channel making videos about it. We were over the fucking moon. George Springer, how could they go out, get the best hitter on free agency? And now we're looking at this guy, and it's only one down year. It's only one down year. But now we're looking at him, and it feels like it is a completely different light than the way that we used to talk about George Springer. Like, I feel like there is, like, literally no hype, no excitement surrounding George Springer leading off for the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's only one down year.
Yeah.
What do we need to see from George Springer in spring training to hop back on that train of excitement and go, holy shit, like, that 1-2-3 of the Toronto Blue Jays of, like, Springer, Bo, Vlad, like, that's a powerful punch.
Yeah, you might see a common theme here, folks, with some of these players and what they need to do. George Springer needs to hit the fastball.
Right.
We broke him down in a podcast a few weeks ago, and we talked about how his run value against fastballs was just not good. His run value against sliders is even horrible. Oh my God, -9. But he just needs to get back to barreling up the baseball and hitting the fastball and squaring it up and pulling it, man. George hits the ball all over the ballpark, but where he does most of his damage is pulling that ball to left field, left center field. Like, he does a lot of damage out there when he's on top of that fastball. Man, you're right. Like, we do need George Springer to be that factor that we used to see him as, that big dominant factor at the top of the lineup. 907 OPS, it has dropped down in over 2 years to 732. And looking back here, guys, he had the most plate appearances of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, and ABs.
That's almost 700 plate appearances because he's batting leadoff that were basically just an average player. We need a dominant guy. We need Springer dingers back. We got to see it, man. We need the power back for George.
Yeah, 100%, dude. It's the difference between starting the game with one out or starting the game, putting the pressure on the hitter with someone on first or someone on second or wherever, right? Like, that is a critical difference because the second that you do that, you start the game like that, now you got the hitter on, or the pitcher, on their heels. And that's when they can make a mistake. And that's when you can end up with those blow-up first innings, right, where you just take the game in the top of the first or bottom of the first, right? So I do want to see George Springer get back into it, and something that I'm going to be looking for 100%. And I feel like this is just like so overblown at this point, but it's because there's truth to it. Don't be wincing when you're swinging the bat, dude. Are you fully healthy?
Dude.
Are you ready to go? You've had all off season, and it's gonna happen. You're gonna get banged up. You are gonna get banged up. It's 162 games. It is bound to happen eventually. But can we start off the season feeling fresh? Are we feeling good in spring training? I don't want to see any of those wins.
I'm just wondering if it's even possible. When have you never not seen this guy?
That's what I'm saying.
You know, like
that's
maybe
what
that's
I'm
just
saying.
his game, bro.
No.
It just has to be.
It's like, that's not your game, dude. Like, don't identify with yourself with that.
I love George Springer. I love him so much because he tries 150% every single thing he does in the outfield, on the bases, when he swings. It's 150%. But what happens when you're 30? You get hurt.
Yeah.
You get hurt, man.
Yeah.
And you know what I want to see from George? Ground out, man. Like, I know we get on Vladdy for not running out those double play balls. George, you can let it go.
Yeah,
just don't hurt yourself running out.
Let's make it through spring training not getting injured.
Please,
yes, that would be a really nice thing.
That's what I want to see.
Let's not injure ourselves. Let's not exert ourselves so much, dude. Like, I trust you. You're a veteran. You'll get there eventually. Yeah. Let's make it through spring training just warming up. That's something I want to see from him.
Give me 70%.
Yeah.
You know, that's good. 70%'s good. Now, when the regular season goes on, or it's actually, even more importantly, when it is postseason, yeah, then go.
Well, of course,
try hard.
Dude, but here's the thing: we
gotta
make
it
to postseason.
Exactly,
first,
you gotta
dude.
make it,
and we're gonna need healthy George Springer to do that. Speaking of effort, though, somebody on the complete other side of things is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Because this is our dude, this is our guy, and something that has been talked about with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for the longest time is like, he's lazy, doesn't put in all the effort. These are the conversations that people have about this guy. Now, you're on the cover of the show. You were part of a Super Bowl commercial that we saw
that was wild.
Yesterday, Guerrero.
Shut up.
You have apparently been in the gym all off season, putting in the work. I like the videos. I like the photos. I like everything that I'm seeing from you, dude. I think I'm very excited to see what you have to offer. How are we going to come out in spring training? How is the swing going to look? Are we going to be feeling confident? Just looking at Guerrero and the way that he conducts himself and plays baseball for the Toronto Blue Jays in spring training, that's going to be maybe the biggest evaluation for me out of everything so far.
Yeah, like, kind of what I'm looking for, and it's similar in the sense to the two guys we just talked about in George and Alec, you know, because Alec, you know, he really went in the gym, he got in shape, great. We know that, right? I'm not going to be out here looking like, how does his, you know, chest looking, right? Like, obviously, it's a good compliment, but more importantly, how is he looking with his ABs, okay? And same thing with George Springer, how is he hitting the fastballs? ABs is a big one for me. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We know he's going to hit the fastball. We know he's going to get on the fastball. He's late with the fastballs all last year. He needs to get on and do damage. That's the number one pitch to go off of. But the other thing is, how are the ABs? Because I've seen clips and highlights and everything of him leaving fastballs in the center of the zone, and then they just go slider for the rest of the AB, and he strikes out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how can we avoid swinging away at the garbages? How can we pick up the ball? It's very hard. I mean, that's why these guys get paid $19.9 million to go and do it. He's got to be able to learn to pick up and let some of these sliders go. If it's low, let it go. You know what I mean? And then make the adjustment later on. If you see a low pitch, let it go, especially if it's a heavy slider pitcher, that's their go-away pitch. Look for something up that you can drive. Look for something up and in that you can take care of. And then if they end up leaving and hanging a slider, well, you're looking there and you can adjust to it.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I mean, we've said it time and time again. Like, if Vladdy goes, then the Blue Jays go.
Yeah.
And what blew me away is that right before we hit record on this, we were looking at all the Toronto Blue Jays. We had that whole screen up, looking at all their at-bats and their plate appearances and everything. And I think I knew this. Like, I think if somebody would have asked me this, I would have guessed around here. But just, like, actually seeing the graphic, seeing Guerrero and seeing that he was 12th in WAR on the Toronto Blue Jays last year. 12th, not even in the top 10. This is supposed to be your franchise guy, the guy that everybody looks at and goes, that's Vlad, like, that's the dude that we want at the plate in a key situation. And he was 12th when it comes to WAR on the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, guys like Tim Meza and you know, closers were higher than this guy, right? It's like,
Brandon Belt.
That's not necessarily a graphic that I want to see associated with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And I feel like when people are talking about the whole conversation about, well, who are you going to extend, Bo or Vlad? it looks pretty clear when you look at this.
Yeah.
It looks pretty clear, and I know that this is only one season, but if Vlad goes, the Blue Jays go.
Yeah.
I want to see that guy up in the top 3 in 2024.
Yeah, and honestly, I think a big factor of this too, obviously, when you look over here, you got Chapman, Kiermaier, and Varsho being in the top 4. Defense is a huge factor, but that's a good talking point. Look what he did last year in terms of his fielding. He was in the 5th percentile.
Not good enough.
And yes, he's a first baseman, and first baseman usually gets shat on in terms of, like, outs above average and stuff. Well, then, make it up with the batting, and make it up with the fielding, too, and make it up with your on-base. Like, his base running value is just bad.
Yeah.
It was just bad last year, and maybe people have a good point talking about running out these ground balls and making dumb decisions on the bases too. Like,
I just had a flashback, and I forget what game this was in, but I think it was in a key and important game.
I think I was
where Guerrero's on first base and not really paying attention, and then he gets picked off at first base.
Or are you thinking about Wild Card Game 2? He gets picked off at second when he was talking to Bo Bichette.
Maybe it was second.
And he's like, no, check. Like, he's like, no.
Yeah.
No, check it. And he was out.
I think he was there. Yeah. I do also remember a time that he got picked off at first.
Oh, yeah.
Too.
I think I remember.
But like, that's what I mean. Like, why am I having these memories? Right now? Like, those are things that, like, when you're at the MLB level and when you are getting paid $19.9 million, we just can't be making those mistakes.
Base running isn't just about being the fastest player. It's about being the smartest player on the base paths, right? And, like, that's why they don't have it here. They could have just put, like, speed. And I think they actually do have, they literally have a graphic for speed right here. He was 27th. Okay, he's not the fastest guy, obviously, but the IQ of the base running was very low. So, I mean, are we going to get a good sample size in spring training to figure out if he's good defensively or good base running? We might get a glimpse of, like, okay, there was a good positive play there, but you're obviously not going to see it until the full season plays out.
Yeah, of course, guys. And then finally, as far as spring training goes, one other key player that we are absolutely keeping our eye on, folks, is Dalton Varsho, guys. The whole conversation last year about whether we won the trade, whether we lost the trade, we don't know, right? And that was kind of the answer by a lot of Blue Jays fans, which is what we just don't know until a few seasons go on. Well, guess what? This is season 2 of Dalton Varsho being in the Toronto Blue Jays system. This is season 2 of this guy. Defensively speaking, you can see it up there. Absolutely phenomenal.
And base running. Very phenomenal.
Base running. Great. Yeah. Look at those two things. They are absolutely incredible. Batting run value in the 2 percentile.
Yeah, negative 19.
That is just something that we need to fix. That is just something that needs to get better.
Look, and I was kind of making a joke, like, look, if this guy, if we all expected him to hit, like, Vladdy, this guy would be mother effing Mike Trout. You know what I mean? Like, just based on all this, like, value he brings with his glove and his legs. Mike Trout is prime, granted. But, look, I look back to 2022. What did he have in this year? Look, he had a 59th, percentile in batting. I'm asking you to be an average dude. Just
with the bat.
With the bat. And then everything else will just make you an incredible player with the WAR. What was the big difference here? Well, I see a 70th percentile with barrel percentage. So for this spring, how hard is that ball coming off of this barrel? You're going to probably see a few sample sizes of this, but we need to see the barrel go up. Are we getting weak ground balls? Are we getting pop-ups? Are we getting groundouts? What are we getting? I want to see a lot of barrels, because if you can barrel it and pull, like, look at that spray chart on the right here, where he's pulling all of these home runs down the line, all 27. Are we going to pull more? If you're, I'd be cool if you became like the left-handed Danny Jansen. You just pulled every ball. I'm not expecting you to hit 250. Hit 230 and hit 30 home runs and pull every baseball. You're going to get the ABs.
Well, I remember when he came over to Toronto, and the whole conversation was, especially with the renovations, well, dude, that left field fence, right? Like, we are going to be able to pop a bunch. And I remember kind of the conspiracy theory almost was a lot of Blue Jays fans were looking at Varsho and saying, hey, they know they're making the renovations right now.
That was me.
They're going out, and they're getting these guys who can pull the baseball, because the ceiling could be 30 or 35 or even 40 home runs in this new ballpark. And I do still believe that. Like, Dalton Varsho has that capability. It was just a really rough year last year for him, and it felt like there was never any big stretches where this guy was getting hot, and he could just never really get into his rhythm. So I want to see him come out. I want to see him absolutely annihilate a few baseballs. It doesn't need to be all of them. It doesn't need to be batting 300, but hit a few damn baseballs really hard.
Yeah, and to his credit, you get traded to a new team, a new country, a new city. you got to get adjusted. There's a lot of expectations. We know Toronto media, including ourselves, can be pretty hard on these players coming over. We expect a lot from them, especially when you're replacing Lourdes and Teo basically in that 4 spot. So hopefully that, this isn't also a contract year for him. He's really settling into his role as an everyday Toronto Blue Jay player. He can get just relaxed a bit and just allow himself to barrel up and just put up a good season, man. Like, if you can hit in the upper 700s OPS, I'll take it, man.
I would be so over the moon about that, dude.
So happy.
I would absolutely love that. The final thing that I do want to bring up, and we're not actually going to be able to evaluate this until later in spring training, but looking at that lineup as a whole, right? That's one of those, exactly, right? You're not really going to know until the final week of spring training, because that's really when you get all of your guys in, and even then, sometimes they don't have everybody. But just seeing where people are roughly slotting in that lineup,
right?
As opposed to other guys, like when you have multiple guys in there, who's batting above the other one, who's batting last, right? Like, where is everybody with the construction of things? Because there's been a lot of projections out there about what the lineup is going to look like. Where is IKF going to bat? Where is Dalton Varsho going to go? Justin Turner, what about him? Is he going to be the locked-in 4 guy in the lineup? We don't really know yet, and because of all these guys, because they're all kind of new. So I'm excited to see what John Schneider's cooked up for us in terms of the lineup. I
agree. Real quick shout out to IB Strokin. I missed that name. That's a dope name. I love it. Dude. Gifted the 1 Blue Jay Today membership. Gifted it to Jid. Let's go. Shout out to Jid. Welcome and thank you, IB Strokin.
Well, I be stroking a lot. If we see Alec Manoah come out looking good, Dalton Varsho barreling the baseball, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. catching up to the fastball as well. That's going to get me stroking.
Yo, fun thought on what you said right before shutting out IB Strokin. You were talking about where is Justin Turner going to bat in the lineup. I saw something that was interesting. At first, I was like, no. But it was the idea that Justin Turner would bat leadoff eventually for the Blue Jays. And at first, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense, right? Yeah, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And I heard a couple of arguments that made me think, like, okay, look, maybe if George isn't doing George stuff and not playing up to his standard, and if he's just, he's getting to his later 30s where all he's got is the barrels, he's got the home run potential, and he suits better as a 4-hitter. Well, Justin Turner would have had the second highest on-base percentage amongst the Blue Jays last year. In the bottom part of the lineup, you're worried about speed. Well, technically, if you look at the bottom part of the lineup, those guys aren't going to be hitting the top anyways, but those are the guys who have the speed down there. Right. So if you do want guys who are fast on base for Justin Turner to drive him in, he would flip the lineup over, and he would then have those guys on base if they were able to get on. So there was those were the 2 arguments. I was like, okay, like, you kind of got me thinking, and to start a game like that would, if Justin Turner, if he ends up being one of the better hitters, like, you'd want him to get a lot of ABs. So I heard that argument. At first I was like, nah, to the idea, but it could be a possibility.
Do you remember where he batted for Boston last year?
I think he did flirt with the second spot a little bit, and then 4 a lot.
I thought that they did have him, because I mean Devers is effectively locked in at number 3 for them most of the time, but I do think that there were a few games there where they had him at 2, and then a lot of the times at 4, and I was also kind of considering like maybe 2. I thought that's where you're going with that, but like maybe 2 at one point in the season, like just depending on how he's doing, right? Because we know that John Schneider does like to flirt with the playing the hot bat and everything like that, which I like to an extent. But I could see a reality where potentially he is that second guy. It all depends how George Springer's coming out the gate, though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a huge factor, because you also don't want to like move George if it's not warranted, right? He earns and deserves this spot at the top part of the lineup, but if we see something similar to what we saw last year, I think it makes more sense to put him.
Dude, I feel like the second that you move George, it's like he's never going back. Yeah, it's almost it's like he's so locked in at this point that like, if you move him, it would almost be disrespectful to put him back there almost. Right, it's like the second that it's done, now we're gonna find a new guy immediately. Right. Maybe that's just my opinion, guys. You let me know in the comments down below. But honestly, I hope that we never have to see the day, and that George Springer just comes out the gate looking healthy and looking strong. Yeah, great. So guys, those are all of our topics, all the things that we are gonna be looking forward to in this spring training. I'm sure there's a ton more. There's gonna be a ton of storylines popping off in spring training, but those are kind of the top things, man, because look, the Blue Jays had an underwhelming offseason, so I think we got to look at the guys we currently have and see what they can do for 2024. 100%, dude, 100%. Guys, if you haven't already done so, please hit the like, smash the subscribe button, let us know your thoughts down below about literally everything that we talked about today. Shout out and thank you to everybody who's been watching along with us, who's going to watch this later, who has subscribed, who has donated, we got a few of those as well. We appreciate all of you folks. Guys, and thank you so much for watching. And as always, go Jays, go!